That's it. That did it. Oh, we're live.
Yep. So I'm in a very awkward spot.
Well, you need to slide back more.
I know. I was in an awkward spot inside my chair. Hi, everybody.
Oh, yeah, we're live now.
Yeah, we're live.
Hi.
So give us a minute. We're going to get the blog talk on, and then we will start our show.
Yes.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Love Talk Radio.
And now we have everybody.
Yes.
Yay!
So, Facebook realm, the Vibe Radio Network. We're live.
We're live. We're tired.
A little bit. But it's a good tired.
Yes.
It's tired for a good reason.
Hey, Lulu.
We have
We just got back from Scares.
Scares That Care, number 8.
Chris ran the race. He survived,
Barely.
but he survived. So, yeah. And we're getting signed in so we can chat with y'all.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. We're running a little behind. We're sorry.
We had the lunch tour.
We launched a tour and we came
Then we
back
had to
and
eat dinner.
made dinner and
So, yeah. Cheers.
yeah, cheers everybody. Cheers. So this evening is strawberry maple bourbon cocktails.
Right to the back of the nose.
They are quite tasty.
Right to the back of the nose. Clears it right out.
So, but anyways, yeah. So we're here and yeah.
So let's talk about Scares while we're here.
Yeah.
So
we just got back this morning.
Yeah.
We the convention wrapped up yesterday afternoon, but we spent one more night to try and crash
crash
and recover, and with mixed success. We're still tired, as Beth has pointed out, but we had a wonderful weekend, and we can't wait to do it again.
Yes. So big weekend it was ET weekend. So they had 4 of the stars from ET, including Henry and Dee and Casey and Robert. Look at my signatures. I think that was right. Let's see. There's Henry. There's Dee. Yep, I was right. It was Robert. Ha! And as I said, Casey. So yeah, I got them all to sign the ET magazine. I'm very happy about that. We also got to see Danny from Shiny.
Yep.
And
Really nice guy.
Yeah, really, really nice guy. Got his
And
signature.
they're all really nice people.
So Chris and I have actually started a book, this lovely book that I picked up, and we're getting as many signatures as possible in here, and eventually we're going to actually donate this to the raffle for Scares That Care. So we got his signature in here. We got Harvey's signature from The Omen in here. So yeah, that was really cool. And of course I got Barbara Hershey for my beaches, but she has been in so many things, and she was absolutely wonderful too.
Yeah.
And then Chris found our star for tonight.
Yes. Now, we did not meet her in person.
No, she was not there, but one of the vendors had her, and it is signed, and I am ecstatic to own it. Because she is one of my favorite icons from growing up. I looked up to this woman. I wanted to be her every Halloween.
So, we will be finding Miss Elvira here, a lovely frame in the not too distant future.
Yes.
But yes, it was a
Until then, she's right there
Yeah.
in all her glory.
fantastic weekend though. If you've never done Scares That Care, follow them on Facebook for a start. See what they got going on, because they don't just do these charity weekends.
Yeah, they're actually going to be at Creature Feature up in Gettysburg at the end of this month.
Yep. So they're one of the main beneficiaries of that event.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be. They do great stuff all year round, and of course, it's all in a support of a great cause, fighting the real monsters of childhood disease, breast cancer, and individuals who are unfortunately suffering from the effects of having been severely burned. So yeah, we're very, very happy to be able to support them, and
if the horror movie genre isn't quite your thing, they do have AuthorCon in April. So they will be having that as well. So reading's more your style. Go to that. Maybe that's the way to get your feet tapped into that. But we will actually be having a tour that benefits Scares the Care. It'll be October 22nd. It's our Churchill Chillers tour at 9 o'clock that night. Myself and Marsha will be the guides, since both of us were always at the Scares That Care convention, and we both love supporting this group. So if you want to kind of come and join us and talk to the state rep, Trisha Monster, who will be there, that's a good way to get started too.
Yep.
Lots of talking, lots of typing.
Yep. People checking in, saying hello.
Woohoo!
So hello, everybody.
And we do have the cats around. Vincent has been playing. In fact, he gave his daddy a toy. A toy. Today, by the way, is Nico and Vincent's Got You Day.
We officially adopted them a year ago today.
So here we go, buddy.
They've been living with us a little longer than that, but yeah, we've officially adopted them a year ago.
Oh, now you don't want to chase it.
We're just doing
Vincent
cat
things.
things. But yeah, so yeah, it was a fantastic weekend. Strongly recommend you check it out. And we're looking forward to being able to.
The costume contest this year was amazing.
The costume contest this year was over the
Oh
top.
my God, we had two Eddies. We had two Eddies.
Eddies from Stranger Things, and
sorry,
they were both
Eddies.
fantastic. They were both fantastic.
They were.
Oh, and yeah, I ran the 5K, and I got this awesome shirt for it.
Yep.
Yes.
But yeah, so lots of fun. Voltaire performed. What was the other one? The whip and other sideshow, Carnival. They performed. We unfortunately did not get a chance to go, but Marcia did, and she really loved them. So yeah, good times. We're staying home this month because
Catching our breath.
yeah, July was very busy.
Crazy.
So yeah.
Oh, we got somebody from Iowa watching.
So wait.
Tiffany.
Cool.
So.
All right, so let's dive into what you guys actually came here for, which is Scary Pop Culture Inspirations Part 2.
So, if you've been watching us for a while, the first one that we did was November of 2020. So it's been a hot minute since we've done this topic, but had a lot of fun with it last time, and we are excited to be doing it again.
So we got 4 stories tonight?
We have 4 stories that we're
because
going to...
2 of them are kind of long.
Yeah, so... Yep. A couple of major classic ones. Yep, so... Yeah.
Sorry, locking the keyboard. Keyboard locked. Okay. All right, so it's been 88 weeks. He counted, not me. Since we chatted up this topic of Scary Pop Culture Inspirations. Last time we brought you the Blood Countess Elizabeth Bathory, the true story behind The Exorcist, the real-life haunting of Hill House, and so much more. Still, that was just the beginning. Tonight we have several more tales, including some of the biggest and most recognizable names in horror. So buckle up as we pull back the curtain of some of these most chilling real-life inspirations behind your favorite works of fiction. So we're going to start with the tale of Edward Mordrake. For those of you that are not familiar with this, we're talking about some multiple personalities. This is one of the most popular tools in science fiction and horror, but sometimes it takes a step further. Whereas multiple personalities are generally portrayed as different compartments in a single mind that takes turns in the driver's seat. Sometimes those portrayals show 2 personalities actively arguing and vying for the control of the same body. And sometimes this two-faced personality literally has 2 faces. We're talking Voldemort, folks. This is the inspiration for Voldemort.
In the Sorcerer's Stone.
Yes.
The very first one. Which, we got more on that.
I'm sorry, dude. This cocktail is not for you. He's asking to get chomped. I'm just saying it right now. Vincent has been in a chompy mood today. He's so adorable.
He is.
Alright, so December 8th of 1895, the Boston Sunday Post published a story featuring an Englishman by the name of Edward Mordrake. Edward was said to live a tortured life, as he was constantly in the company of a second individual in the form of a female face on the back of his head. The face was reportedly as lovely as a dream and hideous as a devil. It would whisper to Edward in the quiet hours of the night, saying such things as they only speak in hell. The abuse that Mordrake suffered at the words of this face would leave him in tears, leading the face to sneer at his pitifulness. After years of begging doctors to remove the torturous anomaly, Mordrake ultimately took his own life at the age of 23. His suicide note begged for the face to be destroyed, lest it continues its dreadful whispering in my grave. Dude, are we going to lay down? Somebody has been missing me. He has been in my lap all day today. Mordrake's personal horror was popularized by George Good and Walter Pyle in an 1896 science textbook. The only problem is that the original story put forth by the Boston Sunday Post was a complete work of fiction. While craniofacial duplication is a real biological phenomenon, those born with an extra face rarely live long, and none of the duplicitous faces are capable of independent speech, as there's only one brain. It was only in 2015 the Museum of Hoaxes uncovered the original Boston Sunday Post article about Mordrake was actually written by a science fiction author, Charles Hildreth, and was otherwise utterly baseless. Hildreth's article was written in an entirely factual manner, including citations, making it somewhat understandable that some would take it at face value. Unfortunately, those citations were also fictional, most notably the Royal Scientific Society, which didn't even exist. When writing their textbook, Gould and Pyle apparently couldn't be bothered with verifying the sources cited in Hildreth's article and making sure that they were legit. They didn't have citation machine back then. Anyway, nonetheless, the myth of Edward Mordrake has endured and even thrived. Depictions of people with two conflicting faces have been featured time and again in popular culture over the years. Less than half a century after the Mordrake article was published, one of the earliest pop culture depictions of a man with conflicting faces on one head may have been in Detective Comics, issue 66 of August 1942. This is where one of Batman's arch nemesis was first introduced, the notorious Two-Face. While Two-Face's origin story differs significantly from Edward's, it is not a far leap to draw a line between the two characters. Two-Face, aka Harvey Dent, was a heroic justice-seeking district attorney who was horribly disfigured in an acid attack. While his disfigured facade drove him mad and turned him into a life of crime and violence, one could argue that there was still a small piece of justice seeking the man left inside. As if Two-Face left the decision about whether to commit a crime or not up to his scarred two-headed coin. It could also be said that other crime lords and villains have also faced the disproportionate portion of Two-Face's wrath. What remained of Harvey Dent was almost always in conflict with the disfigured part of his face that was thrust upon him. Over time, several more Mordrake-like depictions have depicted on paper and in cinema. Of course, like we said, one of the many people that would be familiar with this dates back to the 1990s when Harry Potter became known all over the world. In his first year of Hogwarts, the Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, we are introduced to Professor Quirrell, who has a horrifying turn at the end of the story to reveal to be hosting the parasite Voldemort on the back of his head. In more recent years, the followers of the television show American Horror Story were treated to a direct interpretation of Edward himself in the Freak Show season. This version of Mordrake was a spirit very much at odds with himself. While the face on the back of the head was vicious, his own consciousness expressed regret at what the second face compelled him to do. Much like the original story, this Mordrake eventually killed himself, but his spirit endured, and with his second face compelling him to continue hunting sideshow performers in the afterlife. One of the most recent Mordrake-inspired works was just released in 2021. *Malignant* revolves around a woman who is tormented by violent visions, only to find out the visions are horrifyingly closer to reality than she knows. Since it is such a recent release, we won't dive into it too much further because we don't like doing spoilers. But as far as gory horror movies goes, it's highly recommended to the fans of the genre. The line from Mordrake to *Malignant* is very direct indeed. While the original Mordrake story was fabrication, it was based off a very real condition with chilling effectiveness. And it's an excellent example of how an urban legend can quickly take hold and reverberate throughout the popular consciousness for generations.
That movie, Malignant, I watched it.
I did not.
Yeah. I have a tendency to be a little bit of a night owl. I'll stay up late. I will watch stuff that Beth isn't necessarily always keen on.
I like psychological thrillers, not necessarily the gore. So he watches the gore while I sleep.
There was quite a bit of gore in Malignant. But anyways, yeah, recommend you check it out. If you can find it. When I watched it, it was streaming on HBO Max. I don't think it's there anymore. But yeah, anyways, most recent interpretation, a very direct line from the Mordrake story. Now, from there we are going to go to one of the even bigger names in horror. Perhaps there could definitely be a very, very in-depth argument as to whether this will be the biggest one we discuss tonight. We have two really big ones tonight.
Really big ones.
But this will be the first one of the two. And this one starts in real life. It starts in 1958 in the town of Seaford, Long Island, where the Herman family was living a typical life. The family of four consisted of parents James and Lucille, and their two children, Lucille, age 13, and James, age 12. Their white and green ranch-style home at 1648 Redwood Path had been built in 1953 and contained 3 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, a small dining room, a living room, and a basement that was divided between a utility room and a playroom. In other words, it was a typical 1950s-era home in a quiet, conservative neighborhood with public parks and tree-lined streets. It was the last place that you would expect anything out of the ordinary to occur. However, on the afternoon of Monday, February 3rd, 1958, things were proceeding as they did on any normal day, at least until they no longer were. It was clear and cold outside, and Lucille Herman, a registered nurse, was there to welcome her children home from school and to prepare dinner. The children, Lucille and Jimmy, were 2 ordinary kids with ordinary interests. Soon after the children entered the kitchen, chaos erupted in the house. In a matter of moments, various bottles containing liquid in different rooms of the house suddenly began to pop their caps and dance around. No one saw the bottles move or explode, but all of them heard the caps as they popped loose in the bottle's contents when spewing into the air. They would later discover an opened bottle of bleach in the basement utility room, a bottle of liquid starch in the kitchen, bottles of shampoo and medicine in the bathroom, and a bottle of holy water had opened in the master bedroom and was lying on its side with its contents spilled. Each of the bottles had been sealed with a twist-off metal or plastic cap. There were no corks or crimped caps that might have somehow popped loose. Puzzled, Mrs. Herman called her husband, who worked for Air France in New York City, and reported the strange popping sounds they had heard. Herman was just as confused by the incident as his wife was, but since no one had been hurt, he decided there was no need for him to go home early. Following his usual schedule, James Herman took the train to Long Island and arrived home just before 7 p.m. During his commute, he pondered his wife's call and was sure that there must be a solution for the mystery. He believed that some sort of chemical reaction in the products had caused the bottle lids to blow, and the fact that they did so at the same time was merely a coincidence. Perhaps it had been caused by some sort of excessive humidity in the house. He quickly investigated the bottles when he arrived home and confessed to being baffled when he found that they were screw-top lids. How could they have simply popped off?
Enough pressure will do it.
Yep.
Just saying.
But with no ready answers and no further activity over the next couple days, the bizarre incident started to fade from the family's thoughts, and was starting to be written off as just one of those things. But then, on Thursday, February 6th, when the kids arrived home from school, another half-dozen bottles popped their lids. A bottle of nail polish, a bottle of rubbing alcohol, a bottle of bleach, detergent, and the bottle of holy water on Mrs. Herman's dresser. An encore performance of the events just a few days prior. On Friday night, it happened again. Only this time, when the bottles began to pop open, James Herman began to suspect he knew the culprit responsible for the multiple containers' strange behavior. He surmised that his science-loving son had somehow rigged the bottles to pop in order to scare his family. He thought that perhaps his son had planted some carbonated capsules inside the bottles with dramatic effect. Herman spent the entire weekend secretly observing Jimmy, determined to catch him in the act of tampering with a bottle. Much to James's surprise, on Sunday morning, February 9th, several caps popped off bottles of starch, turpentine, and holy water, leaving the containers rocking back and forth on the shelves. James had kept a close eye on Jimmy and was feeling baffled and a bit angry. How did his son pull it off? James burst into the bathroom where Jimmy was brushing his teeth and accused him of rigging the bottles to pop. Jimmy vigorously protested his innocence, and as if to prove the point, James was startled to see a bottle of medicine suddenly move across the top of the sink and fall into the basin.
Not the sun.
A moment later, a bottle of shampoo also slid across the sink and fell with a thud to the floor. James immediately examined the bathroom, searching for hidden wires or strings. He found nothing, and finally had to admit that there were things going on in the house that he could not explain. Unsure of what else to do, he called the Nassau County Police Department and spent the next several minutes on the phone trying to get Lieutenant Richardson, the desk officer who answered the call, to take him seriously. When he heard the story, Richardson accused James of either playing a practical joke or drinking too much, but he was soon swayed by the earnest tone of the man's voice. It helped that James had a good reputation in the community. Richardson promised to send someone to investigate. The ensuing investigation and reports would capture the attention of the country, as Popper the Poltergeist became a subject of fascination, gossip, and skepticism. It would also come to serve as the inspiration for one of the most notable horror stories of all time, Poltergeist, which hit the silver screen on June 4th of 1982. Poltergeist tells the story of a California family whose home is invaded by ghosts that eventually abduct their daughter into a paranormal realm. Now, back to Long Island, the first official police report came when Lieutenant Richardson dispatched Officer James Hughes to the house. Officer Hughes was feeling skeptical and was left wondering how he managed to wind up with the nutcase calls. Within a few minutes, though, he had changed his mind about the nature of the case when several bottles in the bathroom popped their lids and fired them in his direction. He quickly concluded that the Hermans did indeed need help of a sort that he could not offer himself. Detective Joseph Tozzi was assigned to look into the case. He read Hughes's report of the incident in the bathroom with interest. While not willing to pass judgment without actually visiting the scene, he was relatively sure the Hermans were experiencing some natural phenomena or were simply imagining things. Or, he noted with the cynicism of a veteran police officer, the popping bottles could be getting some help from a human source. On February 11th, Detective Tozzi began his vigil at the Herman house. That same evening, a perfume atomizer overturned and spilled perfume in the daughter's bedroom. There was no one in the room at the time, according to reports. Over the next few days, the disturbances seemed to center around the bottle of holy water in the parents' bedroom. On several occasions, the lid of the bottle popped off, and once, after hearing the distinctive sound, Mr. Herman dashed into the room and found the bottle on the floor. He picked it up and found it strangely warm to the touch. Later that day, on February 15th, the activity took another turn as the Herman children were watching television in the living room with Marie Mirtha, their middle-aged second cousin. A porcelain figurine on an end table next to the couch began to wiggle and then shot 2 feet through the air, making a loud crashing sound as it landed on the floor. To the amazement of Miss Mirtha and the children, the figurine was unbroken. After this last demonstration, the Hermans decided to turn to another source for comfort and to aid the stumped Detective Tozzi in his investigations. They contacted Father William McLeod of the Church of St. William the Abbot for help. As devout Catholics, the Hermans believed that the church would help them where ordinary methods had failed. Father McLeod came to the house and sprinkled holy water in each of the rooms. Unfortunately, Popper the Poltergeist had decided that he didn't want to leave. During the next 2 weeks, since Popper has made his first appearance in the Herman house, news of the strange happenings had leaked to the media. The story received a great deal of publicity, even meriting articles in Time and Life magazines. If the beleaguered family thought that mopping up spilled liquids and having their possessions broken by an unseen force was bad, then the onslaught of public attention was worse. During the day, the Herman home was surrounded by reporters, photographers, curiosity seekers, and an astounding array of television equipment. While the Hermans managed to get used to these intrusions into their lives, they weren't quite prepared for some of the strangeness that came with it. Letters and telephone calls came every day. Many of them proposed logical solutions, while others assured the Hermans that Martians had landed nearby, or that the problem in the house was the spirit of a long-dead Indian chief, or that the Russians were tunneling under Long Island to invade New York. The Hermans managed to stay patient with everyone, though. They never turned away anyone, and they listened attentively to all the calls and suggestions that came in. Even those that shouted, "Repent!" into the telephone at midnight or proclaimed that the Sputniks are here. Many of the letters and visitors were less easy to tolerate, however. Letters arrived in barely intelligible scrawl, condemning the Hermans for their sins and suggesting that they had invited these tricks of Satan. Ministers from all sorts of dubious faiths conducted rituals on the front lawn of the house. But not all of the suggestions and attempts to help were so bizarre. One man who came to the house, Robert Zeter, was a physicist from Long Island's Brookhaven National Laboratory. He brought a set of dowsing rods with him and went over the property with them. When he was finished, he stated that he believed there were underground streams below the house. He thought that the water might be creating a freak magnetic field. Detective Tazi examined this idea at length, but a geological survey suggested that the information was inaccurate. Tazi's case file grew thicker and thicker with notes, observations, and research. At one point, he had been walking down the basement stairs with Jimmy Herman when a bronze statue of a horse weighing nearly 100 pounds flew across the basement and hit the detective in the legs. Jimmy had been nowhere near the statue, and no one else was down there. Tazi had absolutely no idea how it was possible.
I hope he took out more life insurance.
Yeah. He had checked with the Air Force, and after studying their flight plans, they had told him that sonic booms from passing jets could not have caused the disturbances. He also ruled out radio waves by contacting the Radio Corporation of America. The Long Island Lighting Company had set up a delicate oscilloscope in the basement, but they had detected no underground vibrations. Building inspectors from the town of Hempstead pronounced the house structurally sound. The Seaford Fire Department even inspected a well on the property to see if changes in the water level could be causing the disturbances. However, they found that the water level had been stable for at least 5 years. Although puzzled, Tazi remained determined, and he tried valiantly to discover a source for the happenings. He finally found hope in a letter from a woman named Helen Connolly of Revere, Massachusetts. She wrote that she had experienced odd events in her living room where chairs and furniture moved about. She didn't have a ghost in her house, but rather a very heavy downdraft through her fireplace. When capped with a rotary metal turbine, the flying tables and chairs ceased to fly. Mr. Herman immediately had one installed on his own chimney, convinced that the strangeness was finally coming to an end. But that wasn't meant to be. No sooner had the workmen completed the installation than a porcelain figurine launched itself from a table and smashed against a desk. The figurine had managed to travel a distance of more than 12 feet. It left a dent on the wood that was broadcast to television audiences all over the New York metropolitan area. On February 20th, events became even more violent. Another figurine was smashed against the desk. A bottle of ink popped its screw cap and then sailed into the air and splashed its contents on the wall. And a sugar bowl flew off the table under the watch of Detective Tazi. It had been close to Jimmy, but not within his reach. Needing a break, the Herman family spent the night with a relative. Tazi stayed in the house, but the rest of the night passed without incident. When the family returned the next evening, though, the sugar bowl again flew from the table, and this time it shattered into pieces. On February 24th, Tazi was startled to his feet by the sound of a large noise from Jimmy's room. No one had been in the room or near it, yet a large bookcase had managed to fall face down onto the floor. The next night, while Jimmy was in the room doing his homework, his record player lifted and moved 15 feet across the room. A small statue of the Virgin Mary flew more than 12 feet and struck a mirror frame in the master bedroom. A bookcase filled with encyclopedias was upended. A heavy glass centerpiece from the dining room table flew up and struck a cupboard, chipping away a piece of molding before falling to the floor. A world globe shot down the hallway from Jimmy's room and just missed Detective Tazi. A newspaper photographer named John Gold from the London Evening News witnessed his flashbulbs lift off a table and fly through the air to strike a wall. In addition, Popper had begun knocking on the walls as if trying to get more attention. Tazi had become concerned about the new violence and the disruptions. Until that point, the activity had been limited to popping bottle tops. He'd explored every possible explanation that he could come up with, and while he was not prepared to say the house was haunted, he was all out of fresh ideas. About this time, the staff of scientists at the parapsychology laboratory at Duke University, North Carolina, became interested in the events reported in the Herman home. This group of researchers, under the leadership of Dr. J.B. Rhine, had already compiled a mass of evidence that supported the idea that certain people, under the right circumstances, could influence the behavior of objects without touching them. They called it psychokinesis, or PK. As the disturbances at the home continued, Dr. Rhine's assistant, Dr. Pratt, traveled to New York and arrived at the Herman house on February 26th. Dr. Pratt believed that someone in the house was unknowingly causing the strange incidents to occur. Meanwhile, other researchers came to believe that the incidents in the house were being caused by an actual ghost, a poltergeist, or noisy spirit. These prankster ghosts had traditionally targeted religious items, as the disturbances had done with the holy water and the Virgin Mary statue in the Herman house. On the other hand, strong evidence remained for the idea that there was a human component behind the hauntings. It had been noted by researchers that an adolescent child, usually a girl, was almost always among the members of the household being plagued by poltergeist phenomena. They believed it was possible that this young person might be capable of psychokinesis during the height of puberty. In every case, though, the young person might be unaware that she or he was unconsciously causing the events to happen, making them as bewildered as the adults around them. In the case of the Herman house, Jimmy, according to Detective Tozzi's notes, was at or near the scene of the poltergeist disturbances more than 75% of the time. For many incidents, he was the sole witness. However, the detective had cleared the boy of deliberately causing any of the disturbances.
Amy could have told him.
Huh?
Said Amy could have told him who it was.
Now, like others who came before him, Dr. Pratt was welcomed into the Herman residence and greeted warmly. Bleh.
Check that reversal.
He explained that he had come as an observer and spent most of his time there chatting with Jimmy, playing cards with him, helping him with his homework, and generally just being around the young man. There was no sign of strangeness during the visit. Hopper was absolutely quiet. Pratt then summoned another colleague from North Carolina, William G. Roll. Together, they interviewed the family members and were convinced that none of them were perpetrating a hoax. The family was much too shaken for it to be a colossal hoax, Pratt told a United Press reporter. Things were quiet for the next several days, as though the poltergeist did not want to perform for the scientists. Then on March 2nd, 1 month after Popper first arrived, he decided to make himself known again. All of the Hermans were in the house to witness what took place. First, a dish vaulted from a kitchen cabinet and shattered on the floor. Then a night table flipped over in Jimmy's room. Popper was back, and yet there was still no explanation as to who or what he was. 2 days later, a bowl of flowers slid down the dining room table and jumped into the air. A bookcase turned end over end in the cellar. But this would not be Popper's farewell performance. That event would occur on March 10th while Mrs. Herman, Jimmy, and Lucille were getting ready for bed. James Herman was away on business. Dr. Pratt and Roll suddenly heard a loud popping sound in the cellar, and they hurried downstairs to see what it was. They found that the bleach bottle, sitting in a cardboard box, had somehow lost its plastic lid. For reasons unknown, this became the last act of the Herman family poltergeist. There had been a record of 67 recorded disturbances between February 3rd and March 10th. The Hermans had been visited by detectives, building inspectors, electricians, plumbers, firemen, and parapsychologists, yet none of them had been able to present a satisfactory explanation for what had occurred in the home. Weeks after the household returned to normal, experts still came to investigate and to theorize about what had taken place. As late as August 1958, the scientists at Duke still had no clue as to what had happened and why. By this time, the Hermans had had enough of investigations and just wanted their lives to get back to normal. What did happen at the Herman house on Long Island? No one really knows. Popper the Poltergeist is just puzzling today as he was in 1958. While the mystery remained, Hollywood took a turn at interpreting the events into something that fit for the silver screen 24 years later. Loosely based on the Herman experiences and revolving around the family's own theory that the events were related to an ancient Native American burial site, Poltergeist took the public on a terrifying ride. As chilling as the on-screen story was, the movie remains infamous for its behind-the-scenes incidents as well. Within 6 years of the movie being filmed, the two young actresses who portrayed the sisters died tragically. Dominique Dune was murdered by her boyfriend, while Heather O'Rourke, whose famous line, "They're here," announced the coming of the ghost, died of congenital intestinal issues at just 12 years old. Actor Julian Beck, 60, who portrayed preacher Henry Kane in Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, died of stomach cancer before the film could be released, and Will Sampson, who took the role of a Native American shaman, died after undergoing a heart-lung transplant the following year. Author James Caan, who wrote a book to accompany the film, said that seconds after he wrote the line, "Lightning ripped open the sky," his work building was struck by lightning, and all the arcade games in the lounge room began to play themselves. While separated from the real-life events on Long Island, the tragedies that took place amid the dramatization on the big screen left many convinced that Poltergeist was a terrifyingly cursed production event in its own right. That was a mouthful.
Yep, I'll let you answer, Patrick.
Yes, yeah, I will get into that. And now, the event that many of you have been waiting for. Were there any questions, or?
Nope, just Patrick commenting. I added a few comments in there, but
Okay.
it's not so easy to type on my phone while I'm on camera.
I need to wet my whistle.
Alright, so The Nightmare on Elm Street. As we may have mentioned before, there's a connection here to the family. Wes Craven taught at Chris's University.
Yes, yeah. So that was back in the late 1960s. He was a humanities professor at Clarkson University.
And the boiler room is located on the university as well. Just so y'all know that. Oh, so Nightmare on Elm Street. Of course, this was produced in 1984, but from 1975 to 1979, Southeast Asia was one of the last places on Earth you wanted to be, especially in Cambodia, where the Khmer Rouge ruthlessly arrested and executed anyone associated with the former government or foreigners. In Laos, civil war raged with civilians frequently caught in the crossfire. Those who could flee did, and thousands of refugees found their way to the American shores. For one Cambodian family that was successfully had made it to the U.S., they were still not free of the horror that was inflicted upon them. The memories remained, and their son had already been traumatized. The child would stay awake for days for fear of something in his nightmares would chase him and eventually kill him. He finally fell asleep one night, but would cry out in the middle of the night one last time. By the time his family got to him, he was dead. The experience was placed within a wider phenomenon occurring throughout Southeast Asian communities, a phenomenon that has actually been established in the medical world. It's called sudden arrhythmic death syndrome. Most common among young men who are seemingly healthy, they would simply cry out in the middle of the night randomly, and then they would die. It was later discovered that this wasn't an unexplained phenomenon. They were suffering from undiscovered medical problems, including a slightly large heart and other defects. This rare syndrome was first noted in the Hmong refugees to the U.S. and Canada from Laos in 1977. What's really interesting isn't the medical proof that you can indeed die in a nightmare. It's the paranormal link to SADS, as its acronym. Medical journals have already outlined the link between the victim of this syndrome and their cultural beliefs in the spiritual world. This was first suggested in regards to the Hmong population, which has cultural beliefs about nocturnal pressing spirit attacks. To the people, a spirit which takes the form of a jealous woman sits on one's chest and suffocates you in the middle of the night. In the 1970s and 80s, the Hmong belief evolved to take on account of the political context. Many were unable to worship properly, and as a result of the guerrilla warfare against the Laos government. By failing to worship properly whenever they were incorrectly performing rituals or failing to carry out sacrifices, the ancestor or village spirits would not protect them from the jealous woman Pressing's attacks. By the early 80s, dozens of Southeast Asians living as refugees in America were dying in their sleep, leaving already traumatized families completely devastated. This terrifying series of real-life events caught the attention of writer-director Wes Craven. The inexplicable nature of the deaths left a lot of room for interpretation, and Craven's mind drifted into the creation that is still with us today, A Nightmare on Elm Street and its nightmarish antagonist, Freddy Krueger. Visiting the individuals in their minds' most vulnerable moments, of course, involves their dreams. Freddy dispatches his victims time and again on screen to the spine-tingling horror of audiences for the first time in 1984. A Nightmare on Elm Street is regarded by many to be the foundation for the slasher film genre that remains so popular today. For the last several decades, Freddy has developed into the deepest recesses of our imagination time and again with a simple yet traumatizing premise. Teenagers have nightmares of mysterious and yet grotesque figure that attempts to kill them, and sometimes succeeds. If they die in the dream, they die in real life. With every iteration, whether it is film or one TV, we discover more and more about Freddy Krueger and his past, and explore the possibilities of the dream world in which he operates. Along the way, this monster helped make Wes Craven a household name, some untold millions of dollars also, and he would assuredly continue to haunt the dreams of horror aficionados for years to come. It's worth noting that while A Nightmare on Elm Street was inspired by the misfortune of the Southeast Asian refugees in the late 70s and early 80s, there have been similar links between the supernatural and dream monsters throughout history. Without summarizing the entirety of human history, it's safe to say that before science could explain the physical and psychological natures natural phenomenon, gods, spirits, and demons were used to make sense of the ailments that befell planet people. Before we knew what sleep paralysis was, we pinned it on the paranormal. Even the term nightmare can be traced back to mare, a Norse spirit that would crush people's chests in the dead of night and cause traumatic nightmares for the victim. According to folklore, mare was believed to ride horses, leaving them exhausted and covered in sweat, a symptom associated with night terrors and nightmares.
That was a bit confusing because the mare is not the horse. The mare is the spirit actually riding the horse.
Yeah.
Whereas we call female horses mares.
Yeah.
So that took me a few reading through that paragraph multiple times to figure out what was going on there.
Now, the mare would also tangle their hair, which is another symptom of thrashing around in one's sleep. Mare is also associated with witches, which, when they would take on the form of animals, their spirits would effectively leave their bodies, enter the animals, and they, of course, would possess them. This would leave them in a trance. Scandinavia, Germany, Poland are the most popular champions of mares and have their own takes on this typical disheveled creature. In fact, some of them bear similarities to our own Freddy Krueger. And the mares aren't alone. On the island of Fiji, the natives believe that the spirit of a recently deceased relative can take the form of a demon who returns to their living relative to impart important information or complete unfinished business. The demon will eat a sleeping person, making them talk in their sleep. Instead of waking you from this horror, those nearby will say kina kina or eat eat in order to prolong the possession. It will give the relatives a chance to talk to their deceased relative and explain why they have returned. When the person being eaten awakens, they should curse or chase away the spirit to end the terrible experience. Simply tell them to go away, and you'll be free from their midnight snack. Thailand's also home to demons seeking a feast of the dead in the night. Sleep paralysis in this part of Asia is caused by the ghost Thing Am. The spirit is known to cause bruising, a telltale symptom of a violent spirit or a demonic attack. Thing Am sits on your chest while you are asleep and often causes troubled nightmares and uncomfortable sleep. Some even claim that this fiend could kill you in this sleep. Pakistani attributes their sleep paralysis monsters to one of three things: jinns, demons, or Satan. These creatures are called by black magic, and that is performed by enemies or those who are jealous and wish to cause harm to the victim. To protect against this, Pakistani culture dictates several measures for defending against evil supernatural beings. This includes wearing a tawiz, an amulet to ward off the evil eye, performing exorcisms, and a blessing of haunted houses with specific Muslim practices. There's no specific old hag sitting on the chest of the innocents in Pakistan. Instead, any old negative spirit or entity will do the trick. Finally, out of all cultural groups, Egyptians are probably the most terrified of sleep paralysis. A huge number of studies and investigations have even attempted to explain the high incidences of such troubled sleep in Egyptian culture. Here, the monster is one of two creatures: an evil African queen who might be Lilith, or a female demon belonging to the Jewish mythology, or it's a jinn. An evil jinn typically bears the blame for sleep paralysis as a result of the strong religious traditions that are still present within the country. According to the Islamic mythology, jinn are genies, and this is not the only time they have been blamed for a bad night's sleep. This is just a sampling of sleep paralysis monsters. There are many more examples from other cultures around the world. While considered thoroughly fictional interpretations of these horrors, Freddy Krueger may be one day considered America's take on the monsters that visits us in our dreams. Hey dude, you gonna let Daddy?
Watch your glass.
You coming down?
He doesn't know he's not.
Nope. I am distracting, that's what I'm doing. I am being the center of attention.
So, as we said, we have 4 for you tonight, which means that we are about to dive into our last one for this evening. This one's a little shorter, but it's no less fascinating, although it does not quite have the pop culture reference, doesn't quite have the staying power of, say, Poltergeist or Nightmare on Elm Street. But all the same, very interesting. So, we are going to start in Toronto, Canada, which will become the site of a very unusual experiment back in 1972. Yes, isn't Nico adorable? Yes, he is. Yeah,
Yeah.
biting, yeah.
Biting, kidding. Apparently Nico does not like the taste of the soap I used.
So, Toronto, 1972, a parapsychology research society led by poltergeist researcher Dr. George Owen set out to see if a ghost could be coaxed into existence using only the power of the human mind.
No. Just no.
Well, yeah.
Don't do it.
Getting ahead of things here. I know, you don't approve. It's okay. All right. It's okay. Have another drink. So, anyways, now this team consisted of a variety of talented individuals, including a former chairperson of Mensa. Yes, that Mensa, the IQ society where only like the top 2% of people with IQs can actually get in. So, yeah.
We're never going to join.
Yeah.
Neither are you, sir. Half a brain cell.
Now, this wasn't another attempt at harnessing psychokinetic powers in an individual. Rather, they were actually attempting to bring forth an independent entity based on willpower alone. The entire effort was overseen by psychologist Dr. Joel Whitten. The group decided to try and summon Philip, a fictional character whose life would have coincided with actual events. The group wrote a narrative for Philip Aylesford, which placed him in England in the 1600s. He was involved in the English Civil War. He was friends with King Charles II. He was a spy, and was burdened by an unhappy marriage to a woman named Dorothea. Despite his powerful connections, Philip's love life would be his undoing. Philip fell in love with a Romani girl, but Dorothea sought revenge by accusing the Romani girl of witchcraft and having her burnt at the stake. Shortly thereafter, Philip took his own life out of despair for his lost love. Again, none of this was true, but it served the purposes of what would come to be known as the Philip experiment perfectly. Dr. Owen's group started by hosting seances to try and summon Philip with no success. But after tweaking some of the atmospheric properties, lowering the lights, making things a little creepier, things started to resemble more of a traditional seance, and things started to happen. The table would vibrate, drafts would sweep across the room as though a window were open, and unexplained noises started to occur. Most notably, they seemed to be able to communicate with Philip by matching rapping sounds to the questions that were asked. It wasn't long... Philip? Philip? Okay. It wasn't long before Philip made his presence known in other ways, moving the table from side to side and at one point lifting it up off the ground. He would turn the lights on and off in the room at the request of the group, and several members even reported hearing his voice when questions were asked of him. Philip was becoming more and more real with each session, and he was almost always able to answer questions pertaining to his life, which matched up with the biography that was written up prior to contact being made. These experiments were caught on audio and video, and numerous independent witnesses observed the happenings as well. Despite the evidence, the experiment has been largely dismissed by many due to the lack of experimental controls and the generally poor reputation of seances. The overseeing Dr. Witten concluded that the group had not managed to obtain their goal of summoning Philip. Rather, the evidence collected was the result of a subconscious defense mechanism generated by the experiment participants themselves. Fast forward to 2014, and the latest psychological horror film to hit the silver screen is The Quiet Ones, co-written and directed by John Pogue, who you may also know from his works including Ghost Ship back in 2002.
Opening scene still freaks me out in that movie, by the way. That is like the stuff of my nightmares with that wire.
Now, The Quiet Ones replaces Toronto, Canada with an estate on the outskirts of London, England, where Professor Joseph Copeland gathers some of his top students to try and draw the darkness out of a deeply troubled girl named Jane, who seems to have some telekinetic powers or is perhaps the victim of a demonic possession. Rather than follow the typical route of psychological counseling and medication, or perhaps even an exorcism, the professor and his students attempt to summon the dark energy out of Jane into a physical manifestation that can be captured. Think Exorcist meets Ghostbusters.
Or
Maybe.
Fantastic Beasts and that one thingamabobber thing that he had.
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember what that was called.
But in any case, in typical horror movie fashion, things do go horribly awry. Despite the differences, the influence of the Philip experiment weighs heavy on the plot of The Quiet Ones. The Philip experiment sought to prove that ghosts as we know them can be summoned from our own consciousness. And an experiment depicted in The Quiet Ones showed similar methods in trying to extract paranormal activity out of a girl's consciousness. While the real-life experiment never became violent or horrifying, that just doesn't make for the most thrilling and dramatic of films. So while The Quiet Ones may be based on a true story, it would be fair to say that artistic liberties were used to their fullest extent. So, anyways, that was it for tonight, story-wise at least. But yeah, it has been, busy month. We're looking forward to having a little bit more of a low-key month in August here, but still going to be very busy. We have tours running 7 nights a week, and we thank our amazing guides over and over and over again for helping us do these tours every single day, because there's no way that we could just do it ourselves.
Yes. So thank you for those of you who become adult in charge while we are off doing other events.
Or even just taking an evening for ourselves.
Yes.
We greatly appreciate that.
Yes, we do need that every now and then.
Yes. But so yeah, our amazing guides, we greatly appreciate that, and yeah, we are going to be, even though it's going to be, as we say, a little bit more low-key in the weeks ahead, we still are going to be doing things. Again, tours are going. We have our next and last John Marshall House tour for the summer is at the end of this month on
The 26th?
August 26th. After that, we do not know when the next one will be, but it's going to be at least getting into the winter season. So it's going to be several months before, minimum, before we're able to do another one of those.
It'll be post-October, definitely.
Yep.
Let's see, we also have, as I mentioned before, we have that Scares That Care benefit tour. We're working on setting up another one for a different group in September, but we don't have a date yet, so I'm not going to announce that yet.
Yep. But if you want to go ahead and sign up for the Scares That Care benefit tour in October, you can actually go ahead. You can already find it. It's on the website. Just look. You'll find on October 22nd the Churchill Chillers tour. There will be a little subnote on there that says Scares That Care benefit tour, and 100% of the proceeds from that tour, your entire ticket price, is going to go towards Scares That Care.
Yep.
So if you want to go ahead and sign up for that, you can go ahead and do that now. The more people we get to sign up now, maybe we get to open up a second tour slot and actually do two tours for them that night. We would love to be able to cut them a nice fat check at the end of that evening. So
let's see, Key West, you can still sign up for that.
clock's ticking though.
Clock is ticking. You need to get that reservation deposit put down.
The event starts 4 months from tomorrow.
Yep.
So, well, yeah, Friday, December 2nd, that is when things kick off, arriving down there in Key West. So 4 months from tomorrow, it'll be here before you know it. If you're interested in joining us, now is the time to go and sign up. And yeah, we'll be doing another market down at the Flower Cheetah towards the end of this month too.
Yep.
So
definitely check Chris out there. The haunt story is going to be available.
Yep.
I got some more stuff, more fun earrings that I made for scares that Chris will have available.
Yep.
And bracelets, necklaces.
All kinds of good stuff.
Yep. As for our next Facebook Live, we are doing murder houses next.
Haunted murder houses, and let me tell you.
Wow, oddly interested.
Apparently there is a niche of people out there that love murder houses. Because as of right now, let's just say typically these Facebook Live shows for us get about 20 to 30 people that are, say, they're going or interested. And of that, we maybe get about a third, and we appreciate everybody who tunes in, and it's going to be fantastic.
Chris told me the number today, and I said we might need to put out a little FYI post.
Yeah, so as of right now, 2 weeks from today, Haunted Murder Houses has over 1,600 people interested or going. No idea exactly how many of them are going to tune in, and I think that some of them might be expecting something that they're not going to get. This, as you are all very well aware,
is very low budget.
Very, very low budget.
We run on alcohol.
We run on booze. Our lighting is...
Well, you can see it on my head. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's weird, and we're working off a 4-year-old... Our audio-video setup here is a 4-year-old tablet that we have sitting on a pile of spooky history books.
They're the next research project.
This is not going to be some documentary, and we're trying to let people know that, but...
and of course cats.
And cats. So it could start off a little crazy in 2 weeks from today. We shall see.
See what happens. Maybe we get new viewers, maybe we don't. We'll find out. But just be aware, it might be busy that day.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of the month, we're going to do Haunted Venice. Because Venice, now that one's going to be a little bit different. It's a lot more vignettes than the full detailed stories like you heard tonight. So, because there's a lot of stories, and it was just fun putting it together. Now I want to go to Venice. I want to go to Venice.
We have a couple of years worth of trips to get through first here.
I know. Maybe they'll stop the restrictions by then, or it will sink, one or the other. Anyway, so that's why we're going there, and of course we'll announce September's lineup. I'm currently working on those scripts right now, so they're not quite set yet. But I will be fulfilling a request that month. That's the one I'm currently working on. So, somebody had a request a while ago, and well, it's finally coming to fruition.
Yep. So, but yeah, we got more shows coming up. We have more tours coming up. We have more of everything coming up. And I think that for this evening, we will have more sleep coming up in the very near future.
finish the drink and I'm going to sleep because I got to be up at 5:30.
Yep. So going to be an early morning tomorrow.
And I'm wearing my new my new fun leggings that say coffee because murder's wrong.
Yep.
Because I work at a coffee shop.
And you're wearing your Hellfire Club shirt because we did finish watching season 4 of Stranger Things this past week as well. So.
And we're actually going to decorate the house this year for Halloween as Stranger Things upside down.
Yeah.
So I have some. Well, let me just say I have a lot of vine making to do. A lot of vine making to do. But yeah, we've got a good portion of our crew coming in as Stranger Things characters, so it'll be a fun night.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
I don't think we'll be able to dress the bats up as or the cats up as demi-bats. Something tells me that will not fly, literally.
No, they do not like costumes. We've tried that. It did not go well. Did not go well at all.
Una lasted the longest 5 minutes with the cape, and that was it.
I think because she forgot that it was there for a few moments.
Yeah. Hi, Lulu. You gonna say hi? I'm gonna lift you up so you can say hi, and you're gonna hate it. Say hi, Lulu. Okay, now you're done.
But let's see. Anything else? Anything else that I'm forgetting?
Well, if you want a fun fact, the Duffer Brothers actually went to Hopewell, Virginia, one of the days when the debris was falling from the air from the industrious side of things, and they said this was the upside down.
And actually, that was one thing that I didn't even consider until now. Not that completely different tangent. Stranger Things you could also tie into being kind of inspired by Poltergeist type stuff.
Oh, Poltergeist. There's so many. Vecna is related to Freddy.
Yeah, but teenage girl in puberty with PK powers. L. Yeah, so.
Vecna invading your dreams, and there's Freddy.
Yeah.
I mean, the pink dress in season 1 was inspired by what E.T. wears. Mm. So, I mean, there's so many references. Yeah.
Yeah, but lots of good stuff going on.
The fact that Steve knows he's in a horror movie and is going to be the last one standing.
All right, well, I feel like we're rambling a little bit now.
We are. So with that, we will see you in 2 weeks.
Yep, we will look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. As always, feel free to drop us a note at any time. We do love hearing from you. Yeah.
We're going to get some sleep and we'll be much better next week.
In 2 weeks.
Or 2 weeks, sorry. All right, so with that, night all. Hope to see you out on tour soon.
Yep. Good night.
Bye.
Thank you for using Blog.